Well, hello, and we are on to Philadelphia. Lily Zhao, Brandon Cruz, Tim Van Vorn at Lambeau Field following the Packers' loss today to the Bears. But, hey, there's still more games to be played. We will be talking about that. Here's tonight's starting lineup. The Packers fall into the Bear trap, and they're limping into the postseason. They also are feeling a bit lucky, maybe with number 7. It's all said and done. Will that matter? The mayor makes us say what, and the jeans are good enough for our high school hotshot.
Certainly didn't want to go into the playoffs like this, but that's our circumstance, and so we got to be tough-minded and got to be critical, and we got to flip the script as soon as possible.
Well, flipping the script may be easier said than done, Tim. When you look at the script that was played out today at Lambeau Field against the Bears, it really wasn't a good one, and it didn't have a good ending. Let's just start with the Bears' final drive. I mean, the Packers had them at 3rd and 11, yet they still kicked the game-winning field goal.
Absolutely. A penalty gave them 15 yards at the beginning. Caleb Williams running around, kept plays alive. And then the Packers just dropping back into some sort of prevent defense, guarding the sideline. Sure, you weren't going to let the Bears stop the clock, but you gave up way too much yardage in the middle of the field. A spike by the Bears. Good execution by a team that's on its second head coach this season. Has moved through the offensive coordinator role. Rookie quarterback. You let that happen. Guess what? You're playing tougher teams when you get to the playoffs. So that's something that's going to be gnawing at the Packers this week for sure.
Yeah, and if you look at this one, the Bears were not a good team. They didn't do a whole lot, but what they were able to do is capitalize on mistakes by the Packers, and the Packers had them kind of all over the place. Special teams, Jaden Reed fumbles. I mean, this was not the clean game that this team wanted to go into the postseason with. How do they deal with this? Because it is a recurring issue.
It is a recurring issue, and Matt LaFleur has talked all season about shoring things up and being more focused. It's wonderful to talk about that. The Packers really haven't done that on a regular basis. Special teams, a big culprit today. That's an embarrassing punt return for the Bears to pull that thing off. They get into the end zone. This is an offensively challenged football team. The Packers gave them a little life early in the game, and it came back to burn them.
Yeah, speaking of just being really stagnant on offense, that's the word that Jordan Love used. Tim, this passing attack really has kind of gone downhill. I mean, they were riding high for 5 weeks, scoring 30-plus points. The last 2 weeks, they've really struggled. So what's going on there?
You have to get ahead. If you're going to run the football, you have to get ahead, then use that run to set up the pass. That works well when you're playing the New Orleans Saints or the Miami Dolphins. Didn't work well against the Vikings, didn't work well against the Bears. And we've talked about some of the Packer mistakes elsewhere leading to trouble on the scoreboard today. But the Bears took advantage and the Packers weren't able to come back against it. Christian Watson's injury definitely hurting the passing game. The inability to really get a lot going. Tucker Kraft was such a big part of an explosive part of the passing game earlier in the season. He's been bottled up to a large degree in the last few weeks, and it's noticeable.
And we'll talk about Christian Watson's injury and his impact to the offense, but let's start with Jordan Love. Of course, he's the guy doling out the football, right? And he's talked about his struggles, just trying to be more consistent, finding his guys, making his reads. And so when you see him leave the game with a right elbow injury, what's the concern there, and will he be good to go next week against the Eagles?
Well, certainly concerned. Malik Willis has had a nice season as a backup quarterback, but Jordan Love is the guy you want out there anytime, any question, and he will be able to be out there against Philadelphia next week. I don't think there is any question about that, but he leaves the game today. And, you know, it's funny, the storyline has shifted a little bit on Jordan Love. Oh, he's got to cut down those interceptions. Well, he has. Yeah, when's the last time he threw an interception? But because of that, he maybe is throwing safer passes, not letting it rip as much. That passing game, as you talked about, Lily, hasn't been too explosive.
Yeah, and before we move on to another really big injury, let's stay with Jordan Love. He talked about all he has to do is kind of get more accurate. He just has to change things, work harder, do all the right things in practice. But how easy is that? Because he hasn't been able to show that he can do that within a week because he has struggled of late. How do they flip the switch, as you heard Matt LaFleur talk about, leading into this game? Because it is a new season, it is a new team, but you are who you are.
You are who you are, and the Packers are still trying to strike that balance in their passing game, in my opinion. Jordan Love likes to throw downfield, likes to spread things out. When he had Christian Watson, they were able to do some chunk plays. Right now, he doesn't have that. We haven't seen as much separation at the wide receiver position, and you just don't see as much dynamite activity in the passing game that you might expect. Last year, this time of year, wow, they were all spreading the field. They were getting all kinds of things done. Right now, not so much.
And now Christian Watson, he goes down with this injury today. Basically, what it sounded like, the reason he was in there was because Romeo Doubs couldn't go today. Then the worst thing could have happened. How do they deal with it? And how does Christian Watson deal with it? Because this is an emotional blow to him and to his teammates.
Crushing to him, crushing to the team, crushing to the fans. You're exactly right, Brandon. Just last week I was saying, boy, they miss Christian Watson in Minnesota. He'd help the offense so much. Josh Jacobs after the game today saying, yeah, we miss him offensively, but I'm thinking about him as a guy. This is a player who's battled back from injury a couple of times. He's very team-oriented. He's coming into the phase of his next contract. There's so much on the plate for him, and then to go down like that. You saw his body language. You saw, if you were watching what Christian Watson was emoting, it was not good whatsoever.
Yeah, and we'll see if this injury does affect him, whether it's in the playoffs this season or maybe even into next year. So a concerning injury there for Christian Watson with that knee injury. Well, Tim, looking at this team, though, the positives that they have, let's talk about the positives, right? And that's Josh Jacobs just toting the rock. Of course, got some work in the first half, didn't play after that. And, of course, he punches in his 8th straight rushing touchdown game, I should say, 15 touchdowns on the season. I mean, he's the workhorse that makes this Packers offense go, and they are going to need him in the postseason.
And he said he wasn't concerned about today because he said, well, I only got 6 carries. Like, you know, I'm the guy on this offense. If I'm getting more carries, everything might look different. And he might be right about that. He's been such a steady performer as the season's gone along. A couple of fumbles here and there, but by and large, you'd have to take the Josh Jacobs season for sure. He's going to be a big part of that game plan at Philadelphia. There's no question about that. You know, part of the struggles with the offense passing is because they've been so good running, and they haven't maybe devoted as much time or emphasis to the passing game. Still trying to find balance.
And let's flip the script now to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Packers, of course, the number 7 seed, going to Philly, the number 2 seed. The game Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Central, right here on Fox 6. And Tim, we talked about Josh Jacobs. On the other end, there's a guy named Saquon Barkley for the Eagles who's put together a 2,000-yard rushing season. He is going to be a beast of a guy to try to stop for this Packers run defense.
Do you want to roll up the highest single-season rushing total or not? That's a good problem to have if you're Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles, whether you're saying 14 games, 16 games, 17 games. He's had a monster season, no question about it. And it all started way back in week 1 against the Packers when the fit was still in question. How's Barkley going to be with the Eagles after those years with the Giants? Guess what? He's been terrific. He's certainly been motivated. He's had a chip on his shoulder all season long. The Eagles have played to his strengths. He's going to be a major focus for the Packers this week, top of the scouting chart, you have to believe, as they get ready for this game.
And what has he done for their quarterback, Jalen Hurts? Because in previous years, and especially last year in the playoffs, we saw Hurts really not perform very well. He's not having to do as much, and it's showing with his success. How big of a deal is this to make sure to worry about Saquon Barkley but not let Jalen Hurts hurt you?
Well, yeah, he takes so much pressure off Jalen Hurts, just like when he was really rolling with the Giants there. He took off pressure from the quarterbacks there. He's that type of player. So the Packers do have to guard against Hurts' mobility. Early in the season, remember they had those mobile quarterbacks early in the year, and Hurts was the first of those quarterbacks. They did an okay job against them, but in the second half, when there were some big conversion plays to be made, Jalen Hurts made them with his legs. Packers have to know that's a key. Now, the conditions could play a factor coming up on Sunday, too. You're not going to be playing at Tampa. You're not going to be playing in Los Angeles. You're going to be playing in Philadelphia. If it's a day like today, the ball wasn't flying all that well here at Lambeau Field. We'll see what happens in Philadelphia. And don't forget, when it comes to Hurts, he has been out because of a concussion, so maybe there'd be some rust when he gets back on the field.
Yeah, and how much does game 1 of the season against these Eagles play into what will be game 18 of the season, or game 1 of the postseason? How much does that play into this, and how much can the Packers take from what they saw in Brazil?
Yeah, I think ordinarily coaches would say there's such a long period of time between these two games. It's not that much. And then this time you had the aberration of playing in Brazil and traveling down there. So I think it is a little bit unusual. I don't think there's a lot of carryover, but a lot of the key players are going to be the same. And the way the game went, the ebb and flow, that certainly would be something Green Bay would be concerned about. Remember that game, though, Edgerrin Cooper way out of position. As the season's gone along, as a rookie linebacker, Cooper's become a big player for the Packers. So players do evolve over the course of a year.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. Now let's look at the playoff picture real quick so you can see what it looks like, because the Lions have just won, so they have made sure to hold on to that number 1 seed. That means the 14-win Vikings have to go to LA and play the Rams. You see Washington also going to Tampa Bay. And then, as we've been talking about, and we'll talk about more, the Packers will be at the Eagles. Now, coming up, the mayor makes us say what, and we talk more about what this history of this matchup between the Packers and Eagles has been in the postseason. We'll be right back.
Do I vote? I don't even know if I vote for her.
You really want to ask that question out of the gate?
I just like getting people's attention with something.
My significant other think he's sexy, so.
Wow. That was interesting. Was that Taylor Swift?
You can't let this hurt for long. We got another game Saturday. We got another game Monday. We got another game Wednesday. We got another game Friday. We got another game Sunday. It don't stop, right? So I love this league. I love the game, and I love what it can do for us and what it's going to bring out of us going forward.
Welcome back to the FOX6 Sports Blitz. Yes, Bobby Portis emphasizing the fact that the Bucs have a lot of games moving forward. They certainly do, but the Packers, turning the page to them, they have one game to worry about and focus on. That's taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card round. So let's kind of take you back to the Eagles-Packers rivalry in the postseason. This is going to be the 4th time that both teams have faced off in the playoffs. So let's take you back in time here to January 11th of 2004, that 4th and 26 game, Tim. And I'm sure that game, you were there. It probably still lives in Packers playoff lore, doesn't it?
Freddie Mitchell. Do you remember Freddie Mitchell for anything else in his NFL career? For goodness sakes. Yeah, it's certainly seared on the memory, on my memory and in many others, I'm sure. And the Packers thought not only could they win that game, they could go to Carolina and win the next week. They felt very good about their football team. A lot of scapegoating of coaches and legacies after that game.
Yeah, the Packers are 1-2 against the Eagles in the postseason. And Brandon, the one game they won was the year they won the Super Bowl. They played the Eagles in the wild card round. And that's kind of happening again this year.
And it's very similar. That was a year that the Packers were the lowest seed in the playoffs, had to go there and win, and they were able to do it with defense, as you see there. The interception in the end zone was huge from Tramon Williams. So it's like maybe history does repeat itself. And this is the thing that, you look for anything to build upon or to look at as an example of how things can be done. And if this team is to look back on anything historically, that is one that they can say, hey, this was a team that wasn't supposed to do much in the playoffs, had to go on the road throughout, yet they went into Philadelphia and they ended up going to the Super Bowl and winning it. The only time in the Rodgers era that happened. Right,
the Packers had to be road warriors that season in their way to a Super Bowl. The Packers hoping to kind of have a repeat like you mentioned this year with Jordan Love at quarterback. Well, guys, let's talk about some key battles for this year's Packers team as they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's start off with the Packers offense, Tim. We've talked about them and their struggles in the passing game, and last 2 weeks are 9 of 22 on third down. That's not a sustainable way to move the chains, especially against a good Eagles defense. Again, how do they turn things around with Jordan Love probably not at 100% this week?
Big question, Lily, and a big thing to point out. I agree with you. Early in the season, remember, the Packers struggled in the red zone offense. They were struggling to win games. Then they got hot. They were very efficient there, and that was the best football they've played all season. And now they have tailed off at the end of the season here. Josh Jacobs has done his job. He bangs it in there with those short touchdowns. It's the other outside stuff that they just haven't been able to get going. Teams have scouted the Packers. They've moved up. They've dared them to beat them with Kraft or Wicks or Reed and Dobbs. It just hasn't happened to the same level. And one key player on that Philadelphia defense, the old Brown Deer High School star, the Badger linebacker, Zach Baum's had a Pro Bowl season.
Yeah, he's had a great year, and hopefully he's not the one wrecking things for the Packers up front. And Brandon, quickly here, the Packers defense have a tall task in front of them, taking on Saquon Barkley. Yeah, and we touched on this early, but that's where, they have to work on that front line. They cannot let Saquon Barkley get to the next level. If they do that, this game is going to be a long one in Philadelphia. So if they can somehow keep him from breaking anything big and keep him in check,
then this is a way to get the ball back in their offense's hands, and maybe they can do something. Maybe they can get into a rhythm. But that will be the key to this, is to be able to stop Saquon Barkley, because if they do that, then all the advantages start to go the Packers' way as they get through that game.
And hopefully they can get a win against the Eagles in Philly. We shall see. All right, let's move on. It's been a rough week for the Bucs, who finished 1-3 against inferior opponents. They're winless in the new year after 2 straight 3-point losses at home against the likes of the Nets and the Blazers. Milwaukee currently 17-16 on the season. On the other hand, though, the Badgers put together a historic victory over the Hawkeyes on Friday. Wisconsin scoring a program record 21 three-pointers in a 116-85 victory. Their 116 points are also the second most points scored in program history. Marquette and UWM also recording wins this week. We will be right back with our high school hot shot. Welcome back. Her parents are coaches and her older siblings are collegiate athletes, so she has a competitive spirit that has driven her to succeed in many ways, and that is why she is this week's Fox 6 High School Hotshot.
Hi guys, my name is Katie Breswitz and I'm a senior at Burlington High School and I play volleyball. I'm a senior in high school, but I'm graduating this week actually. I am going to Vanderbilt University to play volleyball. I loved it. Like, as soon as I stepped on campus, I was like, I need to be here. Like, Nashville, they're obviously in the SEC. It's a brand new program for the first time in 43 years. So I'm a libero, so I'm very short. And I would just say my main part of my game that sets me apart from people is my leadership on the court. As I grew older, I was like, I either need to commit to this, I don't want to be average. 3-time first team all-conference, 3-time county libero of the year, 3-time first team all-county, player of the year all-conference, and then player of the year all-county. Right now I'm in 2 art classes, and this is just an example of how competitive I am. I turned in my art projects and I was like, oh, okay, I think they're like good. And all of a sudden I'm walking in the hallway and I see my art on display. I texted a picture to my family and I'm like, guys, like my art's in the display. Like I beat out all of these good artists. And my dad's like, Katie, like you're making art competitive. And I was like, well, I guess that's just who I am. I don't know if this is unusual for teenage girls, but I'm really liking TikTok. When I'm like laying in bed at night, I'm like, what am I gonna make TikToks about tomorrow? In this school alone, my dad works here, my mom works here, my aunt works here, my other aunt works here. There's 16 grandchildren on this side, 10 of them go to Burlington. I also have a bunch of other teachers that teach at different districts for my aunts and uncles. So every morning in my schedule, I aid for the special needs students here at the middle school. Melina, who's like my best friend, she calls me her best friend. And every single time she sees me, she just gives me a huge hug. So I think it's really special. And I just really want to find any way I can help that community as much as I can. My name's Katie Breswitz. I go to Burlington High School and I'm a team captain on the volleyball team. And I'm this week's Fox 6 High School Hotshot.
And Katie has already made the move to Nashville, Tennessee, and she's excited to start the next chapter of her life. And she also has a much anticipated team trip to Japan coming up this spring. What a great year ahead. All right, everybody, Packers, Eagles this Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Central Time on Fox 6 in the wild card round. It's going to be a fun matchup.
It should be. And Tim Van Voren up at Lambeau Field. And Tim, you know, we've talked a lot about the players that have to match up and what they have to do. What about the coaches this week, and how do they play the role in Sunday's game when you look at Matt LaFleur and Nick Sirianni, 2 very different personalities?
Very different personality. Sirianni will take on all comers, and he's not always popular even on his own side of things in Philadelphia. Matt LaFleur's generally had his team playing for him. He's not had maybe his best season in Green Bay. Now's the Midas touch where you need it. It's the playoffs. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Matt LaFleur. I'm interested to hear what he has to say tomorrow after reviewing the tape of this game and preparing for the upcoming playoff matchup.
Well, I'm sure they will flush a lot of today and focus on the future. For Tim Van Voren, Lily Zhao, I'm Brandon Cruz. A big week of Packers ahead. Stay with Fox 6 for all of your coverage, and we'll see you again next Sunday night on the Fox 6 Sports Blitz.